I'm Michelle Miller.
My name is Caitlin.
So I'm Michaela Walters.
My name's Corinne Conway.
I'm a senior.
I am a senior.
I'm a sophomore.
I am a junior at Marquette University.
Studying media studies and Spanish.
I'm majoring in political science, global politics, and women and gender studies.
I am double majoring in advertising and psychology.
And I'm an anthropology major.
So I identify as an intersectional feminist.
An intersectional feminist and also like feminista or Latinx, like woman.
Do you identify as an intersectional feminist?
I identify as an intersectional feminist.
I define intersectional feminism as the acknowledgement that there is differences in the sexes based on how we're treated, but within that there also are different intersections of class, sexuality, ability, and so being an intersectional feminist means that I'm recognizing my own privilege within a marginalized group and understanding that to have success as a group of women, we need to work from the women in the margins. It can't come from a top-down feminist approach.
I would define intersectional feminism as a feminism that accounts for any identity that it possibly could regarding ethnicity, race, sexual orientation, gender identity, able-bodiedness.
A lot of this stuff, I go to political rallies, I go to Indivisible meetings, which is a group that's forming to resist Trump and his administration. I think that activism is just making a conscious decision to change the status quo and to change what's going on. And I think being a political science major, I've learned how important people are and how important you really can make change with your actions.
I do, but I also have to acknowledge that I have a very severe fear of crowds. And so I can never really find myself going to marches and protests, although I sit there and I watch them from my window and I'm like, oh my God, yes. So I am as active as I can in terms of, I think, what we're about to address in terms of micro and then other forms of macro resistances.
I think I would add that instead of it always being conscious, I think sometimes it's subconscious as well. There are times when things like that happen, like when microaggressions happen, and you're just kind of like, why? It's not even conscious anymore because you know that when people say those things, it's not okay. And I think those are the people I think that are good people and are educated and informed. But instead of it being conscious, it becomes subconscious. Just like microaggressions have become subconscious, microresistances have become subconscious for some people too. Calling people out on their language, and I do that to my family a lot and they get so annoyed. But I think that one's really important because even if people don't mean the way they say things, the way they say it matters, and that really, it affects people and it has been affecting people, and it's because it's been ingrained in us for so long that that's okay to say that because the people that it does affect don't really matter, so they're not supposed to be offended by it. But so that, I think that's the most common thing. And I think that's the easiest one for people to get annoyed of, but that's good. You're supposed to be annoyed by it because you shouldn't be saying it.
I think one of the most important things for me is voting, being an active political participant.
I definitely think that using social media to a certain degree can be a micro-resistance in that it's at least jarring people from their daily routine to think about something they might not think about. I know that I personally enjoy sitting non-traditionally, they're like, oh, sit like a lady. Just not doing that is my way of subtly, like a middle finger to traditional femininity. But I don't know. To me, that feels like a micro-resistance.
I have feminist shirts, and that's very, just hey, I'm a feminist, and people sometimes ask about it, but which leads into a lot of conversation. Even with people, even kind of unsolicited, I just start talking about these things. And especially just when people who are also incredibly privileged have just no idea. One of my favorite people to educate is my boyfriend, who is a white male. And yeah, I educate him all the time. And so that's another thing, just constant, like, and especially just like if something happens and you witness it and it doesn't sit right with you, like, I have a moral duty to address it. I would say the message is mostly like, fuck no. Like, this isn't okay, and like, I'm gonna push until it changes, whether that be small or orchestrated with a big group of people.
We are doing things about it, even minimally in our day-to-day life, and just showing that there are people who care.
It's more of like that confidence feeling. I think that's what I try to send more with messages. It's like, I mean, of course, I want to send things to the oppressor and be like, fuck you, like, you suck, stop doing this. But we all kind of do that, and I think it's more important to build ourselves up and build up our people, like our resistancers. So yeah, so it's always like, if you're not gonna wear makeup, you are gonna wear makeup. Like, it's always like that. Or if a girl looks really nice and you're just like, yeah, girl, you look good. Like, we look good together. Like, we're all looking good. I think that's empowering, like, the minorities together. I think that's more important than always challenging the oppressor.
I think it probably started with going to an all-girls high school. The motto was giving girls their voice, which I always thought was really cheesy and stupid, but now I realize that, like, women have had a voice, but it was about how to use that voice and how to really craft a message. And I think just getting into college, and it was like the second week of school, and someone said, like, oh, that's so gay, and I was just like, what? You know, like, the community that I grew up in, like, you just don't say stuff like that. And I think it was just little stuff that led up to me, like, you know what, I need to speak out, I need to say something.
Like, all these microaggressions that happen, they happen on a macro scale. So it's kind of like any resistance to all of that is kind of a macro resistance, in my opinion anyways.
I think a macro resistance has to be more orchestrated, and it has to be bigger just in like the amount of people participating, or like the actual action, like pushing for legislation is definitely a macro resistance, where is like, but I also think that 1 million people wearing a Free Asada pin is also kind of a macro resistance. So I think it's about volume.
You know, even if it's something small, you don't know how that it could affect someone else, because I know when people speak on my behalf, how good it feels. And I just think that's a really important part of it.
Discriminatory or misogynistic or problematic behavior, I think that micro-resistances are a way for me to kind of almost atone for like socialized sins, if that makes sense. Kind of make sure that I'm not perpetrating what I'm enacting micro-resistances to like undermine.
I think micro resistances are a way to push back against the things that are harder for people to see.
It's just, it feels kind of good, like, after you're like, I made my point, and like I was heard, or at least I think I was heard. So, and I don't know, and maybe if the oppressor didn't hear, other people might have heard, and that's okay. But yeah, I think it makes you feel, well, and for me anyways, it makes me feel like good and like empowered, like, yeah, that like I just did this and I'm happy with it, and like, screw what you're thinking about me now, like, yeah.